Hi there. Tonight we're stepping back in time, way back, to a world where castles loomed large and daily life revolved around land, loyalty, and, let's be honest, quite a bit of mud. Imagine yourself waking up not to the gentle hum of your phone alarm, but to the distant crow of a rooster and the clatter of servants already stirring within cold, stone walls. You, my friend, are about to live a day in the life of a medieval noble lord. You'll quickly discover that while having vast lands and loyal subjects sounds rather grand, the reality was a constant grind of responsibilities, punctuated by moments of intense activity and, surprisingly, structured leisure. You probably wouldn't survive a week, let alone a whole lifetime, without modern plumbing or a decent cup of coffee. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're up for it, drop a comment with your location and local time. It's always fascinating to see where everyone's listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together, as the first sliver of dawn sneaks through the narrow, glazed windows of your solar. That's your private chamber, by the way. You're already aware of the castle stirring around you. It's a subtle shift from the deep, impenetrable quiet of the pre-dawn hours to the low murmur of servants beginning their duties. The air, even in summer, carries a damp chill, and the scent of wood smoke from the hearths below begins to mingle with the faint, earthy smell of the castle itself. You push aside heavy wool blankets, probably more scratchy than luxurious by modern standards, and swing your legs out of bed onto a cold stone floor. Though perhaps a rush mat or animal hide offers a small concession to comfort, this isn't exactly the kind of waking up on the right side of the bed you might be used to. It's more like waking up on the side of the bed that isn't actively freezing. Your valet, or perhaps a trusted page, is likely already waiting, ready to assist you with your ablutions, which, let's be frank, were far less elaborate than anything you'd consider a proper morning routine today. A basin of cold water, a rough cloth, that's often the extent of it. No invigorating shower, no fancy cleansers, just a quick splash to shake off the remnants of sleep. Historians still argue whether medieval lords truly bathed with any regularity, though many accounts suggest it was more frequent than popular myth sometimes implies, especially for the wealthier nobility who could afford the fuel and water. Still, it wasn't a daily ritual, and certainly not with scented soaps and fluffy towels as you dress, which involves layers of woolen tunics, breeches, and perhaps a fur-lined surcoat depending on the season. You can hear the sounds of the castle crescendoing, the distant clang of the blacksmith's hammer, the lowing of livestock from the bailey, the chatter of stable hands, and the unmistakable aroma of breakfast cooking wafting up from the great hall below. It's a symphony of medieval life, and every note reminds you of the responsibilities that weigh on your shoulders. You're not just a man waking up. You're the lord, the protector, the provider, and the judge of everyone within these walls. And across your expansive lands, the weight of your lineage, the security of your people, and the prosperity of your estate all depend on your actions. From this very moment, the sun peaks over the horizon. There's no hitting the snooze button. When entire livelihoods hang in the balance, the castle itself is a living, breathing entity around you. As you move from your private solar, perhaps down a winding stone staircase that echoes with your footsteps, you pass through corridors that are now slowly coming alive. You might glimpse servants already scrubbing floors or hauling water there, faces illuminated by the flickering glow of tallow candles or small oil lamps. The air gets thicker with the smells of food preparation, and you can almost taste the roasted meats and fresh baked bread that will soon be served. This isn't just a home, it's a fortress, an administrative center, and a bustling community all rolled into one. Every part of it operates on a finely tuned rhythm, a rhythm that you, as its lord, set and maintain. Your path might take you through the castle courtyard, still damp with dew, where stable hands are currying horses or moving supplies. The sounds here are different, the soft snorts of horses, the jingle of harnesses, the occasional shout of a groom. You might offer a nod or a brief word of greeting to a particularly diligent stable boy, reinforcing your presence and showing a benevolent or at least watchful eye. Even these small interactions are part of your role, cementing your authority and the sense of community within your stronghold. It's like being the CEO of a very large, very old, and very drafty company where everyone lives on site. The sheer scale of your daily operations is immense. You are responsible not just for your own comfort and well-being, but for the hundreds of people who depend on your good judgment and leadership, from the lowliest peasant tilling your fields to the most senior knight in your service. Their lives are intertwined with yours. This interconnectedness is a defining feature of the medieval feudal system, a system where rights and responsibilities were inextricably linked, forming a complex web of loyalty and obligation. A noble lord in the Middle Ages had a varied and structured daily life, balancing administrative duties, social obligations, and leisure activities, all of which began with this very first stir of dawn. The world outside your castle walls is largely agrarian, its rhythms dictated by the seasons and the sun. Your internal world, however, is a microcosm of power, tradition, and constant activity, a world you alone preside over. One quirky tidbit: many medieval castles would have a resident rooster, whose crow was often the actual alarm clock for the entire household. Far more reliable than any elaborate clockwork mechanism of the time. Imagine relying on a bird for your wake-up call. With the last remnants of breakfast cleared, probably by a flurry of servants, moving with practiced efficiency, your day truly shifts into high gear, moving from the communal space of the great hall to a more private, yet equally busy chamber, perhaps your solar or a dedicated office. This is where you, the noble lord, delve deep into the estate's fiscal pulse. It's less like balancing a checkbook and more like running a small, self-sufficient economy, often without the benefit of a calculator or even Arabic numerals for that matter. Imagine trying to do your taxes using only Roman numerals. Exactly. Your estate manager, a crucial figure in your daily life, would lay before you a series of rolls and documents, often written on parchment. These aren't pristine, printed reports. They're meticulously hand-scribed tallies of income and expenditure. You're reviewing financial matters, collecting taxes from your peasants, rents from your tenants, and various dues that are owed to you. As the lord, this isn't just about accumulating wealth. It's about ensuring the continuity and stability of your entire domain. Every penny, or rather, every silver coin counts, because it directly impacts the lives of hundreds, if not thousands, of people. You're also looking at harvest and supply reports. This is where the true nitty-gritty comes in. Your manager details the yield from last season's crops, how much wheat, barley, or oats was harvested. You'd review reports on the livestock, how many sheep, cattle, and pigs are thriving, how many have been lost to disease or predators. These aren't just abstract numbers. They directly determine whether your household, your retainers, and your tenants will have enough food to survive the coming winter. A poor harvest could mean widespread hunger or even rebellion, which is certainly not on your medieval to-do list. It's a bit like playing a very high-stakes game of The Sims, but with actual lives on the line and no cheat codes. You'd discuss the prices of commodities, the cost of labor, and the expenses for maintaining your castle and properties. Perhaps a section of the wall needs repair, or a new mill needs to be built. All these decisions funnel through you. This level of financial oversight, without modern accounting software, required an incredibly detailed memory and a sharp mind. Historians still argue whether medieval lords possessed a sophisticated understanding of economics in the modern sense, or if their system was simply a highly refined form of bartering and traditional obligation. One quirky tidbit: sometimes these financial discussions would include reports on fines collected for minor infractions committed by your tenants. Perhaps someone's pig wandered into a neighbor's field, or a minor scuffle broke out in the village. These small sums, cumulatively, could be a surprisingly significant source of income, proving that even petty squabbles could line a lord's pockets. It makes you wonder how many lost pet posters would have ended up on your desk, demanding a finder's fee. The estate manager, often a man of shrewd intellect and unwavering loyalty, would present the information orally as well, clarifying any ambiguities in the written tallies. You'd pepper him with questions, digging into the specifics. How many measures of oats did the northern village yield this year compared to the last? You might ask, testing his knowledge and your own recollection. What's the prognosis for the sheep flock after that last cold snap? This isn't just about reviewing numbers. It's about understanding the health of your entire ecosystem. You might even dictate letters or instructions to your scribes, sending messages to your bailiffs in distant parts of your lands, demanding greater efficiency or more accurate counts. The meticulousness required for this task is staggering. Errors could lead to severe consequences. Underestimating provisions could lead to famine. Overtaxing your peasants could lead to revolt. And mismanaging funds could leave your castle vulnerable to attack. There's no easy button, no quick fix. Every decision, every calculation feels incredibly weighty. You are constantly assessing risk, balancing the immediate needs of your household with long-term prosperity. It's a job that demands constant vigilance and a keen eye for detail, making you realize that even without spreadsheets, medieval lords had a surprisingly robust, albeit analog, financial system. And remember that constant aroma of wood smoke and damp stone. It's even more present in these smaller, enclosed chambers, perhaps mingled with the scent of old parchment and the faint metallic temps of ink. The only light often comes from narrow windows or the occasional candle, making the act of reading and writing a strain on the eyes. Your office space is functional, not luxurious, designed for purpose rather than comfort. It reinforces the seriousness of the tasks at hand, grounding you in the reality of your immense responsibilities as the lord of your domain. You're the ultimate bean counter, just with more impressive headwear. After what might feel like an hour of kneeling on cold stone, perhaps you secretly wiggle your toes a bit, but certainly no one notices. You head to the great hall for breakfast. And when I say breakfast, don't picture a quick bowl of cereal or a piece of toast. This is a substantial meal. Think platters piled high with roasted meats, probably left over from last night's supper, thick loaves of dark bread, cheese, and perhaps some preserved fruit or vegetables if the season allows. There might be ale or wine to drink, even in the morning. Water quality wasn't always reliable, so fermented beverages were often a safer bet. though perhaps not the best for tackling a day of complex financial reports. Imagine trying to balance the books after a few tankards of weak ale. It's a testament to medieval resilience. Or perhaps just a sign that everyone was slightly tipsy all the time. This morning meal wasn't just about sustenance. It was a ritual, a cornerstone of daily life that reinforced your position and the social order of your household as you eat. Seated at the high table on a raised dais, you're not simply enjoying a quiet meal. This is often an informal extension of your morning. Duties your steward might approach, whispering updates on the granary stores or a skirmish on the far reaches of your land. A minor tenant might timidly present a petition for your consideration, hoping to catch you in a benevolent mood. You observe your household, noting who is present, who is absent, and the general mood. It's a subtle form of oversight, a way of taking the pulse of your immediate domain even as you chew on a particularly tough piece of salted beef. The sounds of the hall are a constant backdrop. The clatter of trenchers, the murmuring of conversations, the occasional bark from one of the castle dogs hoping for a dropped morsel. The great hall hums with activity. Servants move purposefully, dogs sniff hopefully for dropped scraps, and the general clamour of a bustling medieval household fills the air. This communal aspect of eating was crucial. It reinforced your position at the head of the household and allowed for immediate, impromptu discussions. Historians still argue whether these breakfasts were truly informal gatherings, or if they followed a strict, almost ritualistic protocol, given the rigid social hierarchy of the time. But one quirky tidbit: sometimes, if a travelling minstrel or jester had arrived the night before, you might even get a bit of impromptu entertainment with your morning meal. A medieval version of breakfast television, but with far more lute music and fewer commercials. Just try not to get too distracted by the juggling act when you're trying to remember if you've accounted for that shipment of wool from the northern pastures. It's all part of the glorious, sometimes bewildering, daily tapestry of a medieval lord. The physical setting itself contributes to the atmosphere. The great hall is likely cold, even with a roaring fire in the massive hearth, the smoke curling its way up to the smoke hole in the roof. The walls might be adorned with tapestries, not just for decoration, but also to provide some insulation against the chill. Sunlight, if any, streams in through high, narrow windows, illuminating dust, motes dancing in the air. You sit on a high-backed chair, probably more comfortable than the benches used by the rest of your household, a visual cue of your status. Your family members, your lady, perhaps your elder children, if they are not away at another noble house for their upbringing, would sit near you, also at the high table, but at a slightly lower position, acknowledging your supreme authority within this domestic sphere. This shared meal also serves as a bonding experience, solidifying the ties between the Lord and his household. Even though there is a clear hierarchy, the act of breaking bread together, even if the quality of the bread differs, creates a sense of shared purpose. You might engage in brief conversations with your knights or squires, offering a word of encouragement or a gentle critique about their martial drills from yesterday. It's an opportunity to observe their demeanor, gauge their loyalty, and reaffirm your presence in their lives. This interaction helps to manage morale and prevent simmering resentments among those who serve you. A constant, delicate balance in a world where power could be both absolute and fragile. You're not just their provider. You're their leader, their protector, and often their direct link to the outside world. Having grappled with the cold, hard numbers of your estate, your mourning then shifts to a perhaps even more delicate, yet equally crucial, aspect of your lordly duties, judicial functions. You are, in essence, the local judge, jury, and sometimes even the executioner, though hopefully, today won't require anything quite so dramatic. This isn't a formal courtroom as you know it, with wigs and gavels. It's often held in the great hall or a designated chamber where petitions are heard and disputes are settled. You are the ultimate arbiter of justice for those who live and work on your land. People from your villages, hamlets, and even distant corners of your sprawling estate come before you, seeking resolution for conflicts that, to modern eyes, might seem trivial, but to them mean everything. Perhaps it's a dispute over land boundaries, a common point of contention where a few feet of earth could mean the difference between a good harvest and a poor one for a peasant family. Or maybe it's a squabble over stray livestock, a broken fence, or even a quarrel that escalated into fisticuffs between neighbors. You listen, you weigh the testimonies, and you make a judgment. Imagine having to decide who gets to keep the cow that wandered into the wrong pasture, knowing that your decision could profoundly impact someone's livelihood for the entire year. It's a heavy burden, certainly more pressing than deciding what to binge watch on a Friday night. Beyond these everyday quarrels, you also handle more significant matters. You might be asked to grant permission for marriages. This might sound intrusive to us, but in the medieval feudal system, a marriage could have significant implications for land tenure, alliances, and the availability of labor. A peasant marrying someone from outside your land, for instance, could mean a loss of their family's labor and loyalty to your estate. So, you're not just approving a union of hearts. You're approving a strategic partnership, ensuring it aligns with the best interests of your domain. You're basically the medieval version of a very strict wedding planner. But instead of cake samples, you're looking at property deeds. You are dispensing justice, which means understanding the local customs and unwritten laws that have governed your people for generations. While there might be some overarching royal decrees, much of the day-to-day law is based on tradition and your own interpretation. This requires a keen sense of fairness, a good memory for past precedents, and perhaps a healthy dose of pragmatism. One quirky tidbit: sometimes disputes were settled through trial by ordeal, like carrying a hot iron or being submerged in water, with the outcome believed to be God's judgment. Thankfully, by the high Middle Ages, these practices were becoming less common, replaced by more reasoned, though still rudimentary, legal processes. But historians still debate how consistently these more rational methods were applied across different lordships. It certainly adds an extra layer of stress to the job description, doesn't it? The process itself is less about legal formality and more about pragmatic resolution. There are no lawyers arguing technicalities. Instead, you hear directly from the involved parties, perhaps with a few witnesses called to testify. You sit, often, on your lord's chair, perhaps in a less formal corner of the great hall or a sola. Your steward might record your decisions, ensuring a written record for future reference, a kind of medieval court transcript. Your judgments would be swift and, ideally, final. The goal isn't just to punish wrongdoing, but to restore order and maintain the peace necessary for your estate to function. A community constantly embroiled in disputes is a community that cannot effectively work your lands or contribute to your wealth and power. The gravity of your decisions is palpable. For a peasant, your ruling could mean the difference between keeping their small plot of land or being dispossessed, between a secure future or destitution. This constant pressure to be wise and fair, or at least perceived as such, is a significant part of your daily burden. You might find yourself mediating between two stubborn neighbors, or deciding the fate of a petty thief caught poaching in your woods. The punishments could vary from fines, which contributed to your coffers, to public humiliation, or even more severe physical penalties, depending on the severity of the offense. It's a stark reminder that in this era, power was not just abstract. It was very real and very immediate in its impact on individual lives. You are the embodiment of law and order, and your presence alone often acts as a deterrent. From the nitty-gritty of local disputes, your morning then elevates to the realm of political discussions. You might retire to a more private chamber, perhaps your solar again, or a smaller, less public reception room where you meet with your most trusted advisors, possibly even other lesser nobles who hold land from you. These aren't casual chats about the weather. These are serious conversations, often conducted in hushed tones, about the intricate web of feudal relationships and the ever-shifting political landscape of your region, or even the entire kingdom. The air in these rooms, usually thick with the scent of old parchment and cold stone, now carries the unspoken tension of power dynamics and strategic maneuverings. You're constantly navigating the complex relationship with your overlord. This could be a powerful duke, a count, or even the king himself. Your discussions revolve around matters of state. Perhaps your overlord has called for a levy of troops for an upcoming campaign, or demands increased taxes to fund a royal endeavor. You need to weigh the costs and benefits of compliance. Refusal could mean your lands are seized, or worse, you face military action. Compliance could mean depleting your own resources and leaving your estate vulnerable. It's a delicate dance of power, loyalty, and self-preservation. Imagine trying to explain to a modern HR department that your boss just demanded you contribute 50 armed knights to his personal vendetta. It really puts team building into perspective. These political discussions might also involve your relationships with other nobles, your neighbors, your rivals, or potential allies. Are there border disputes brewing? Is a neighboring lord encroaching on your hunting grounds, or diverting a vital water source? Or perhaps there's an opportunity for a strategic marriage alliance, linking your family's fortunes with another powerful house. You discuss intelligence gleaned from spies or travelers, evaluate rumors, and strategize how to best protect and advance your family's interests. There's no CNN to give you updates. You rely on word of mouth, messengers, and your own network of informants, making critical decisions based on often fragmented or biased intelligence. This is where true statesmanship comes into play. You need to be cunning, persuasive, and sometimes utterly ruthless. Every decision could have far-reaching consequences, not just for you, but for generations of your lineage. Historians still argue whether medieval lords acted primarily out of self-interest or genuinely believed in a broader sense of service to their overlord and kingdom. But one quirky tidbit: sometimes these high-stakes discussions were sweetened with gifts, a prized hunting hawk, a beautifully crafted piece of jewelry, or even a parcel of land used to grease the wheels of diplomacy and secure loyalty. It's a bit like giving someone an expensive coffee mug to get them to agree to a difficult proposal, but on a much grander and potentially deadlier scale. The stakes are always incredibly high. The atmosphere in these meetings is one of controlled tension, while you maintain the outward calm befitting a lord. Your mind is racing, calculating risks, and anticipating countermoves. You listen intently, not just to what is said, but to what is implied, to the nuances in tone and expression. Trust is a rare commodity in this world, and you constantly evaluate the loyalty and motives of even your closest advisors. A misstep in these discussions could lead to feuds, open warfare, or a significant loss of power and prestige for your house. You might lean back in your chair, stroking your chin, weighing the advice offered, knowing that the final decision and its consequences rest squarely on your shoulders. It's a strategic chess match played out in real time, with your lands and lives as the pieces. The need for accurate information is paramount. You send out your own messengers, sometimes disguised, to gather intelligence from distant courts or rumored battlefields. You entertain merchants and traveling scholars, not just for their wares or wisdom, but for the news and gossip they carry from beyond your borders. Every scrap of information is carefully vetted, pieced together to form a coherent picture of the wider world. This constant state of vigilance, this perpetual need to stay ahead of rivals and anticipate challenges, defines a significant part of your political life as a lord. It's a demanding mental exercise, requiring foresight and a deep understanding of human nature and power dynamics. After the physical demands of weapon practice, your morning takes yet another turn, shifting from the battlefield to the boardroom, medieval style. You head to a more comfortable, perhaps slightly warmer, chamber for a series of meetings with key personnel. These aren't formal, pre-scheduled affairs with agendas and PowerPoint presentations. They're more organic, flowing directly from the needs of your sprawling estate. Think of it as your daily stand-up, but everyone is standing because there aren't enough chairs, and also because you're the Lord. The most important of these meetings would be with your estate manager. This person is your right hand, the one who truly knows the granular details of your lands, your people, and your resources. You've already reviewed some financial reports earlier, but now is the time for deeper dives and strategic planning. You discuss ongoing affairs, the progress of the spring planting, the health of the livestock, any repairs needed on the mill or the castle walls, and the logistics of transporting goods to market. It's a continuous cycle of planning, execution, and problem-solving. Imagine trying to manage a large farm, a small village, and a fortress all at once, without a phone or email. That's your estate manager's job, and by extension, yours, beyond the estate manager. You might also meet with your bailiff, who oversees specific parts of your land or collects rents, or your reeve, who is often a trusted peasant responsible for managing agricultural work. Your chaplain might report on the spiritual well-being of the community or any charitable endeavors. You're gathering information, giving directives, and ensuring that every cog in the complex machinery of your household and lands is turning smoothly. This requires not just good leadership, but also keen observation and the ability to delegate effectively. Though with fewer team-building exercises and more if this isn't done by sundown, there will be consequences vibes. These meetings are crucial for informed decision-making. You can't be everywhere at once, overseeing every single detail. So you rely heavily on the reports and counsel of these key individuals. They are your eyes and ears on the ground, bringing you intelligence from across your domain. Historians still argue about the exact level of autonomy these estate officials had, or how much micromanagement lords typically exercised. But one quirky tidbit is that sometimes these meetings would take place over a light midday meal, often just bread and cheese, allowing for continued discussion without a formal break, highlighting the blurring lines between work and leisure in a medieval noble's life. It's like a working lunch, but instead of ordering takeout, someone just brings you some stale bread and a hunk of cheddar. Delicious. The topics can range from the mundane to the critical. A new well needs digging. A dispute arose over a fishing right on the river. Or perhaps news has arrived of a band of brigands operating too close to your borders. Each piece of information requires your attention, your judgment, and your directive. By the time these meetings conclude, usually around midday, you've absorbed a vast amount of information and made numerous decisions, setting the course for your estate for the coming days and weeks. It's an exhausting, relentless pace, ensuring that your lands remain prosperous and secure. The atmosphere in these meeting chambers is practical and focused. The furniture is likely sturdy and utilitarian, perhaps a long wooden table where maps of your lands might be unfurled or inventories laid out. Light comes from the windows, supplemented by candles if the day is overcast or the hour late. The conversation is direct, to the point, and often laden with the specific jargon of medieval agriculture and estate management. You're not just discussing abstract concepts. You're talking about tangible resources, bushels of grain, heads of cattle, the health of your serfs. Every decision you make in these meetings has a direct, visible impact on the landscape and the lives of your people. You also use these meetings as an opportunity to gauge the loyalty and competence of your subordinates. You're constantly assessing who can be trusted with more responsibility, who needs more oversight, and who might be subtly undermining your authority. It's a delicate political dance, even within your own household, as various individuals jockey for your favor and influence. This constant vigilance is part of what makes you an effective lord, ensuring that your command is not only given but also effectively carried out. You are the central hub through which all information flows and from which all major directives emanate. It's a heavy mantle, and these meetings are crucial for bearing its weight. After the physical demands of weapon practice, your morning takes yet another turn, shifting from the battlefield to the boardroom, medieval style. You head to a more comfortable, perhaps slightly warmer, chamber for a series of meetings with key personnel. These aren't formal, pre-scheduled affairs with agendas and PowerPoint presentations. They're more organic, flowing directly from the needs of your sprawling estate. Think of it as your daily stand-up, but everyone is standing because there aren't enough chairs and also because you're the Lord. The most important of these meetings would be with your estate manager. This person is your right hand, the one who truly knows the granular details of your lands, your people, and your resources. You've already reviewed some financial reports earlier, but now is the time for deeper dives and strategic planning. You discuss ongoing affairs, the progress of the spring planting, the health of the livestock, any repairs needed on the mill or the castle walls, and the logistics of transporting goods to market. It's a continuous cycle of planning, execution, and problem-solving. Imagine trying to manage a large farm, a small village, and a fortress all at once, without a phone or email. That's your estate manager's job, and by extension, yours, beyond the estate manager. You might also meet with your bailiff, who oversees specific parts of your land or collects rents, or your reeve, who is often a trusted peasant responsible for managing agricultural work. Your chaplain might report on the spiritual well-being of the community or any charitable endeavors. You're gathering information, giving directives, and ensuring that every cog in the complex machinery of your household and lands is turning smoothly. This requires not just good leadership, but also keen observation and the ability to delegate effectively. Though with fewer team-building exercises and more if this isn't done by sundown. There will be consequences, vibes. These meetings are crucial for informed decision-making. You can't be everywhere at once, overseeing every single detail. So you rely heavily on the reports and counsel of these key individuals. They are your eyes and ears on the ground, bringing you intelligence from across your domain. Historians still argue about the exact level of autonomy these estate officials had, or how much micromanagement lords typically exercised. But one quirky tidbit is that sometimes these meetings would take place over a light midday meal, often just bread and cheese, allowing for continued discussion without a formal break, highlighting the blurring lines between work and leisure in a medieval noble's life. It's like a working lunch, but instead of ordering takeout, someone just brings you some stale bread and a hunk of cheddar. Delicious. The topics can range from the mundane to the critical. A new well needs digging. A dispute arose over a fishing right on the river, or perhaps news has arrived of a band of brigands operating too close to your borders. Each piece of information requires your attention, your judgment, and your directive. By the time these meetings conclude, usually around midday, you've absorbed a vast amount of information and made numerous decisions, setting the course for your estate for the coming days and weeks. It's an exhausting, relentless pace, ensuring that your lands remain prosperous and secure. The atmosphere in these meeting chambers is practical and focused. The furniture is likely sturdy and utilitarian, perhaps a long wooden table where maps of your lands might be unfurled or inventories laid out. Light comes from the windows, supplemented by candles if the day is overcast or the hour late. The conversation is direct, to the point, and often laden with the specific jargon of medieval agriculture and estate management. You're not just discussing abstract concepts. You're talking about tangible resources, bushels of grain, heads of cattle, the health of your serfs. Every decision you make in these meetings has a direct, visible impact on the landscape and the lives of your people. You also use these meetings as an opportunity to gauge the loyalty and competence of your subordinates. You're constantly assessing who can be trusted with more responsibility, who needs more oversight, and who might be subtly undermining your authority. It's a delicate political dance, even within your own household, as various individuals jockey for your favor and influence. This constant vigilance is part of what makes you an effective lord, ensuring that your command is not only given but also effectively carried out. You are the central hub through which all information flows and from which all major directives emanate. It's a heavy mantle, and these meetings are crucial for bearing its weight. As the sun climbs higher, signaling the midday mark, the intense administrative and martial duties of your morning begin to give way to something a little more invigorating, and certainly more enjoyable. The call of hunting and hawking. This isn't just a recreational pastime. It's a deeply ingrained part of noble culture, serving multiple purposes from providing food for your vast household to demonstrating skill, status, and even tactical prowess. After all, a good hunter often made a good warrior, quick to think, and agile in movement. You might change into more rugged clothing, perhaps sturdy leather tunics and breeches, and gather your hunting retinue. This includes your falconer, with his prized birds of prey, your huntsmen, who know the local forests and their inhabitants like the back of their hand, and of course, your pack of hounds, baying with anticipation. The cacophony of excited dogs and chattering men fills the castle courtyard as you mount your horse, a magnificent animal specifically bred for stamina and agility. It's a scene ripped straight from an epic poem, except you're not riding into battle, just trying to catch. Dinner. Hunting was a popular pastime, primarily for game like deer, wild boar, and various fowl. These weren't just for sport. They provided a vital source of fresh meat, supplementing the often monotonous diet of salted and preserved provisions that characterized much of medieval life. Imagine the thrill of the chase, the rush of adrenaline, as you track a wild boar through dense woods, listening to the baying of your hounds before finally bringing it down with a spear or an arrow. It required immense skill, courage, and a deep understanding of the natural world. And let's be honest, it was probably a welcome change from endless discussions about grain yields and peasant disputes. Then there's hawking, or falconry, an even more refined and aristocratic pursuit. Your trained birds of prey, perhaps a magnificent falcon or a nimble hawk, were incredibly valuable assets, sometimes worth more than a warhorse. With a falconer by your side, you ride through open fields, your bird perched on your gloved wrist. When suitable prey, a pheasant, a duck, or a rabbit is spotted, you unhood the bird and cast it into the sky. The sight of a trained bird diving with incredible speed and precision to strike its prey is truly breathtaking. It's a testament to human-animal cooperation, and also a clear demonstration of your wealth and leisure. Historians still argue about whether hawking was truly a more noble sport than hunting, or if it was just less messy. One quirky tidbit about medieval hunting: often, specially bred dogs were used for different roles. Some, like bloodhounds, were for tracking. Others, like mastiffs, for tackling large game. It was a highly specialized operation, making it more complex than just taking your Labrador for a walk in the woods. These activities provided both food and recreation, offering a crucial release from the pressures of your daily duties. It was your version of hitting the gym, going fishing, and stocking the fridge, all rolled into one grand, outdoorsy adventure. The sounds of the hunt fill the crisp afternoon air, the calls of the horn signaling the location of game or the success of the chase, the triumphant barks of the hounds as they corner their prey, the rustle of leaves as your retinue moves through the forest. It's an immersive experience, engaging all your senses and demanding your full attention. This isn't passive entertainment. It's active participation in a primal activity that connects you to the land and its creatures in a very direct way. The satisfaction of a successful hunt isn't just about the food it provides. It's about the assertion of your dominance over nature and the demonstration of your prowess to your men. As the hunt progresses, you might find yourself deep within your own forests, areas that, while part of your domain, feel wild and untamed, compared to the cultivated fields and bustling villages. This connection to the wilderness is also important for a medieval lord, reminding you of the vastness of your holdings and the resources they contain. It's also an opportunity for informal conversation and camaraderie with your knights and huntsmen, away from the formalities of the castle. These moments, though seemingly recreational, subtly reinforce the bonds of loyalty and shared purpose within your inner circle. It's a chance to see your men in a different light, and for them to see you not just as their lord, but as a skilled and capable leader in a more elemental setting. As the afternoon sun begins its slow descent, casting long shadows across your sprawling domain, your attention turns from the exhilarating chase of the hunt to a more grounded, yet equally important, activity: inspecting the estate. This isn't just a leisurely ride, it's a critical part of your stewardship, a hands-on way to ensure that everything is in order and that your tenants, the very backbone of your wealth and power, are content. You mount your horse again, perhaps a different one, fresh and eager, and set off with a small retinue, perhaps your steward and a few guards. You ride through your fields, observing the progress of crops. Are the newly sown fields looking healthy? Is the grain ripening as it should? You might dismount to pluck a stalk of wheat, rubbing the kernels between your fingers, assessing the quality. This is where your practical knowledge of agriculture comes into play. You're not just a lord, you're also, in many ways, a chief. Farmer, you'd probably offer some stern advice to a peasant if their furrows weren't straight enough, which is a bit like your boss critiquing your spreadsheet layout, but with far more severe consequences for a poor performance review. Your journey takes you through villages under your dominion. You pause to speak with your tenants, not just as their lord, but as a direct connection to their struggles and triumphs. You inquire about their families, their health, and any problems they might be facing. Perhaps a roof needs repair after a storm, or a family is struggling with illness. You might offer solutions or direct your bailiff to provide assistance. This personal touch, this visible presence, is vital. It fosters loyalty and prevents discontent from festering. A lord who cared for his people, even in a paternalistic way, was often a lord whose lands were stable and prosperous. You'd also inspect the infrastructure of your estate, the condition of roads, bridges, and mills. Are they well maintained? Are they serving the needs of your community? A broken bridge could cut off trade routes, and a malfunctioning mill could halt grain production, leading to hardship. You're effectively the medieval director of public works, just without the orange cones and safety vests. Historians still argue about how frequently noble lords actually engaged in these hands-on inspections versus relying solely on reports from their estate managers. But one quirky tidbit: some lords were known to disguise themselves as common travelers to observe their tenants and assess the true state of their lands without the usual pomp and deference. Imagine suddenly realizing that the scruffy-looking fellow you just complained to about your leaking roof is actually your all-powerful lord. Talk about a performance review. This circuit of your lands is also a show of force, a subtle reminder of your authority. Your small retinue of armed guards is a visible deterrent to any would-be brigands or rebellious elements. It's a demonstration that your reach extends far beyond the castle walls, assuring your loyal subjects and warning any potential troublemakers. The dust kicked up by your horse's hooves, the glint of sunlight on armor, the sheer presence of the Lord and his men moving through the landscape, it all contributes to the perception of your power. The sights and sounds of your tour are vivid. You hear the bleating of sheep, the distant ringing of a blacksmith's hammer from a village smithy, the laughter of children playing in the dirt. You smell the rich earth, the wood smoke from peasant cottages, and the fresh scent of wildflowers. Along the paths, every mile traveled, every conversation had, deepens your understanding of your domain and its people. It's a sensory immersion into the very fabric of medieval rural life, reminding you of what you were sworn to protect and what provides the wealth and power that define your existence. This direct connection to the land and its inhabitants is fundamentally different from a modern CEO reviewing quarterly reports. It's a far more intimate, immediate, and ultimately demanding form of leadership. You are literally walking the talk, ensuring your kingdom, however small, thrives under your watchful eye. As the late afternoon sun mellows, casting long, golden light across the landscape, your more strenuous duties often give way to a period dedicated to arts and leisure. This isn't just about unwinding. For a noble lord, cultivating an appreciation for the arts was a sign of refinement, education, and cultural sophistication. It showcased that you were not merely a warrior or an administrator, but a patron of culture, contributing to the intellectual and aesthetic life of your household and, by extension, your wider domain. You might retreat to a comfortable chamber, perhaps one warmed by a roaring fire even on a mild day, and indulge in music. This could mean listening to a traveling minstrel who has found their way to your castle, regaling you with epic ballads of chivalry and love, or perhaps a more somber lament. Alternatively, members of your own household, particularly your lady, or skilled courtiers, might play instruments like the lute, harp, or psaltery. You might even play an instrument yourself, though your skills might be more enthusiastic than virtuosic. Imagine unwinding to the medieval equivalent of an unplugged acoustic set, far removed from the thumping bass of modern music. It's a gentle, melodic escape from the clamor of the day. Literature also played a significant role. Though books were incredibly rare and precious, painstakingly copied by hand, you likely possess a small, treasured collection. These could include illuminated manuscripts of religious texts, chronicles of history, or romantic tales of knights and their valiant deeds. You might spend time having a scribe or a learned chaplain read aloud to you, allowing the stories to transport you to different worlds. Or, if you are literate yourself, a growing trend among the nobility as the medieval period progressed, you might pore over the texts yourself, perhaps even attempting to compose your own poetry or contribute to a family chronicle. This intellectual engagement was a quiet, contemplative pursuit, a stark contrast to the physical demands of earlier in the day. Historians still argue about the true literacy rates among the medieval nobility, and how much reading was done for pleasure versus religious instruction or administrative necessity. Other forms of entertainment might include board games, like chess or tables, a precursor to backgammon, which provided intellectual stimulation and a chance for friendly competition among your inner circle. Storytelling, often by your own household members or visiting entertainers, was a cherished form of communal leisure, weaving tales of local folklore, heroic adventures, or humorous anecdotes. It's a bit like your favorite podcast, but live, interactive, and with a much higher chance of someone suddenly bursting into song. One quirky tidbit about medieval leisure: elaborate riddles were a very popular form of entertainment, often shared during these quiet afternoon hours. Guests and household members would challenge each other with complex word puzzles, testing their wit and cleverness. It was a low-tech way to keep your mind sharp and provide a bit of intellectual amusement, perhaps more engaging than scrolling through social media, and certainly less addictive. These moments of quiet enjoyment, surrounded by the familiar sounds of your castle, allowed you to recharge and reflect, preparing you for the evening ahead. They were not just about personal pleasure, but also about fostering a sense of community and shared culture within your noble household, turning your castle not just into a fortress, but into a hub of refinement. As the golden hues of late afternoon surrender to the creeping twilight, the castle begins its transition from the bustling hub of daytime activity to the quieter, more introspective rhythms of evening. Your period of arts and leisure gradually draws to a close, and the sounds of music or storytelling fade, replaced by the crackle of hearth fires being stoked for the night and the distant, familiar murmur of the approaching supper preparations. The very air inside the stone walls seems to thicken, carrying the scent of cooking meat and damp stone. The first significant marker of this transition is the return to evening prayers. Just as your day began with religious observance, it also concludes with it. You, your family, and a significant portion of your household would once again gather in the castle chapel. This evening service might be less formal than the morning mass, perhaps vespers or compline, a series of prayers and psalms designed to bring a sense of spiritual reflection and calm before the darkness of night truly descends. It's a moment for quiet contemplation, for giving thanks for the day's blessings, and perhaps for seeking solace or forgiveness for its challenges. The flickering candlelight illuminates the solemn faces of your household, creating an atmosphere of shared faith and quiet reverence. This consistency in religious ritual, morning and evening, underscores the pervasive influence of the Church in medieval life, a constant reminder of divine order in a world that could often feel chaotic and unpredictable. Following prayers, the attention of the entire household pivots towards the highly anticipated event of supper. This is the main meal of the day, far more elaborate than breakfast, and certainly a focal point for social interaction. You proceed to the great hall, which would now be transformed. The tables, which might have been cleared for administrative work or even weapon practice during the day, are now meticulously set. Servants move with a renewed sense of purpose, carrying trenchers of bread, tankards of ale and wine, and the first steaming platters of food from the bustling kitchens. The great hearth would likely be roaring, casting a warm, flickering glow across the stone walls and the faces of your assembled household. The aromas are incredible. A rich tapestry of roasted meats, perhaps venison from your afternoon hunt, or roasted fowl mingled with the scent of herbs, cooking vegetables, and freshly baked bread. It's a feast for the senses, particularly after a long day of demanding duties and potentially modest midday sustenance. You take your place at the high table, on the raised dais, a visible separation of status that is inherent in every aspect of medieval life. Your family sits nearby, and below you, arrayed at long tables, are your knights, squires, officials, and other members of your extensive household. The hall, which might have felt cold and echoing in the morning, now feels vibrant, alive, and filled with the cheerful hum of conversation and anticipation. This meal, while offering sustenance, is also a deeply social occasion. It's a chance for your household to relax, converse, and share the day's news. You, as the Lord, might engage in conversation with those nearest to you, discussing a successful hunt, a political rumor, or simply enjoying the general conviviality. Historians still argue about the precise etiquette and formality of these evening meals, some suggesting strict rules of conduct while others point to a more boisterous, communal atmosphere, especially in less grand households. But one quirky tidbit about medieval suppers: it was common for guests to bring their own knife, as forks were not widely adopted until much later in the Middle Ages, and spoons were often shared. Imagine sharing a spoon with your battle-hardened knight from earlier, after he'd just been sweating through weapon practice. It really makes you appreciate modern cutlery. The transition from evening prayers to the great hall for supper is merely the prelude to the true heart of your medieval evening, feasting and entertainment. This isn't just about eating. It's a grand social gathering, a vital component of noble life that serves to reinforce bonds, display wealth, and provide much-needed diversion after a day of hard work. The supper you began in section 11 quickly evolves into a full-blown celebration, a spectacle of sights, sounds, and flavors that fills the entire great hall with warmth and merriment. The tables groan under the weight of successive courses. While the earliest courses might be roasted meats and hearty stews, later ones could include more refined dishes, perhaps savory pies, elaborately presented fowl, or even delicate pastries. depending on the skill of your cooks and the availability of ingredients. Wine flows freely, often poured from large wooden or metal pitchers into individual drinking vessels. The air is thick with the rich aromas of cooking, mingled with the earthy scent of rushes on the floor and the ever-present hint of wood. It's a sensory overload, but in the best possible way, especially if you've been living on stale bread and salted meat for days. As the meal progresses, the entertainment begins. This is where your castle truly comes alive with revelry. Musicians would take center stage, playing a variety of instruments, lutes, harps, flutes, and possibly even early forms of bagpipes. Their melodies would fill the hall, ranging from lively dance tunes to more melancholic ballads, setting the mood for the evening. You might tap your foot under the table, or even request a favorite tune. This isn't just background noise. It's an integral part of the experience, elevating the meal from mere sustenance to a celebratory event. Then come the jesters and other performers. A jester, with his motley clothing and sharp wit, would provide comic relief, perhaps telling humorous anecdotes, performing simple magic tricks, or even subtly poking fun at members of your household, including yourself, in a carefully calibrated manner that avoids true offense. Acrobats might perform feats of agility, tumbling and balancing, to gasps and applause. Storytellers, perhaps the same ones who entertained you earlier in your solar, would weave captivating tales of adventure, romance, or history, drawing everyone into their narratives. It's the medieval equivalent of a variety show, and probably far more interactive than anything you'd find on a screen today. This communal feasting and entertainment serves several crucial purposes. Firstly, it's a powerful display of your wealth and generosity as a lord. The abundance of food, the quality of the musicians, and the presence of entertainers all speak to your prosperity and ability to provide for your household. Secondly, it fosters a sense of community and loyalty among your retainers and guests. Sharing food and laughter strengthens bonds, easing tensions and creating a more cohesive household. Thirdly, it's simply a way to pass the long medieval evenings, which without artificial light beyond candles and torches would otherwise be quite dark and dull. Historians still argue about the exact degree of formality expected at these feasts, some suggesting strict protocols, while others believe them to be boisterous, free-flowing affairs, depending on the specific court and occasion. One quirky tidbit about medieval feasts: it was common for diners to throw discarded bones and food scraps onto the floor for the dogs, or even for servants to collect later. While it sounds unsanitary, to modern ears, it was a practical way to deal with waste in a large, busy hall before the advent of more sophisticated disposal methods. Just try not to trip over a stray bone on your way to get more ale. The laughter, the music, the warmth of the fire, the rich smells. It's an immersive experience, a powerful antidote to the day's demanding work, and a reminder of the lighter, more joyful aspects of life as a noble lord. As the echoes of laughter and music begin to fade, and the last of the jesters bows out with a flourish, the grand feast slowly draws to its close. The torches and candles, which once cast a lively glow, now flicker lower, their light softening, and the air grows cooler as the massive fires in the great hall are allowed to die down, or are carefully banked for the night. This gradual winding down marks the shift towards the final act of your medieval day. Retirement, the process of retiring for the night, isn't as simple as just slipping under the covers. For you, the Lord, it's a structured and often ceremonial, affair, reflecting your status even in repose. Your personal attendants, perhaps your valet or trusted pages, would assist you in withdrawing from the great hall. The conversation becomes quieter, the movements of your household more subdued. Many of your knights and officials would also begin to make their way to their own quarters, perhaps after a final nightcap. The castle, which hummed with activity throughout the day and roared with revelry in the evening, now settles into a deep, pervasive quiet, punctuated only by the distant hoot of an owl or the rhythmic tread of a guard on the ramparts. Before you fully retire to your private solar, you would often engage in one last set of prayers. These are often private, personal moments of reflection, perhaps a quiet conversation with your chaplain, or simply a solitary moment of devotion. It's a final opportunity to commend your soul to God, to reflect on the day's events, and to seek divine protection for the night ahead. In a world where life was often precarious and unpredictable, these moments of spiritual solace were deeply important, offering comfort and a sense of order in the face of uncertainty. You might kneel beside your bed, or before a small crucifix or religious icon, letting the day's burdens fall away as you prepare for rest. Once these final prayers are complete, your attendants would help you undress, removing the layers of woolen and linen garments you've worn throughout the day. Your bed, likely a grand affair with heavy curtains for warmth and privacy, would be prepared. Unlike modern beds with springs and soft mattresses, yours would probably consist of a sturdy wooden frame, a straw or feather mattress, feathers for the very wealthy, and thick wool blankets. The curtains would be drawn closed, creating a small, enclosed space within the larger, often chilly, chamber. This cocoon of fabric offered a surprising degree of warmth and a vital sense of personal space, in a castle where true privacy was a rare luxury. As you finally settle into bed, the last of your attendants would withdraw, leaving you in the dim light of a flickering candle or the complete darkness of a moonless night. The castle, outside your private space, would be almost completely silent, save for the aforementioned guards ensuring the security of your stronghold. It's a powerful moment of solitude after a day filled with constant interaction, demands, and responsibilities. Historians still argue about the average sleep patterns of medieval nobility, with some suggesting fragmented sleep cycles due to lack of good lighting and external noise, while others point to the importance of deep, restorative rest for leaders. 1. Quirky tidbit about medieval sleeping arrangements, even in noble households. It was not uncommon for servants or even trusted personal guards to sleep in the same room as the lord for security and convenience, though often in separate, more humble beds. So, while you might be tucked away behind your bed curtains, you might not be entirely alone. Imagine trying to get a good night's sleep knowing someone is snoring just a few feet away, even if they are guarding you. This final act of the day, of withdrawing into the quiet of your bed, signifies the end of your public duties for the moment, allowing you to rest and prepare for another demanding medieval dawn. Having completed the full circuit of a medieval lord's daily rhythm, from dawn's first light to the quiet descent into slumber, it's time to zoom out a little and consider the foundational bedrock upon which all these activities rested: your land ownership and management. This wasn't just about having a fancy title. It was the very essence of your power, your wealth, and your societal standing. You weren't simply rich in the modern sense of having a large bank account. You were rich in land and the people and resources it contained. This ownership was a sacred trust, passed down through generations, and your primary responsibility was to ensure its prosperity and continuity. As the lord, you were responsible for the administration and well-being of your estates, which could range from a single village and its surrounding fields to vast tracts of land encompassing multiple settlements, forests, and rivers. This means everything from ensuring the ploughing and planting cycles were maintained, to overseeing the harvesting of crops, to managing the livestock. You were, in effect, the CEO of a complex agricultural enterprise that formed the backbone of the medieval economy. Imagine having to make sure thousands of acres are productive year after year, with only rudimentary tools and a dependence on the whims of weather. It's certainly more hands-on than clicking by now on an online grocery delivery service. But it wasn't just about the land itself. It was about the people who lived and worked on them. Your tenants, whether they were free peasants or serfs tied to the land, were your most valuable asset. Their labor was what made the land productive, and their loyalty was what kept your power secure. You were responsible for their protection, their justice, as we discussed, and their overall welfare. This paternalistic relationship meant you had a vested interest in their health and happiness, as a sick or rebellious peasantry meant a loss of labor and income for you. It was a symbiotic, if often unequal, relationship where the lord provided protection and justice in exchange for labor, rents, and loyalty. This responsibility extended to maintaining the physical infrastructure of your domain. Roads needed to be kept passable, bridges repaired, and mills victual for grinding grain into flour needed to be kept in good working order. These were public works projects on a grand scale, funded and overseen by you. You might not be personally laying stones, but you are directing the labor, providing the materials, and ensuring the work is completed. Historians still argue about the true efficiency of medieval estate management practices, with some emphasizing their surprising sophistication, given the lack of modern tools, while others highlight the constant struggle against famine and disease. One quirky tidbit about medieval land ownership: sometimes a lord's domain was not a single, contiguous block, but a patchwork of scattered holdings acquired through marriage, inheritance, or conquest. This meant you might have villages under your control dozens of miles apart, making administration incredibly complex and requiring constant travel and communication, often by horseback over treacherous roads. It was like managing a distributed workforce, but without Zoom meetings or even reliable postal services. The challenges of maintaining oversight across such a fragmented domain were immense, demanding constant vigilance and a keen understanding of local customs in each distinct area. This intricate web of land, people, and resources defined your very existence, making land ownership the fundamental responsibility that underpinned every single aspect of your noble life. Building upon the bedrock of land ownership, the next fundamental pillar of your existence as a medieval noble lord is the intricate web of feudal obligations. This wasn't just a quaint historical concept. It was the political and social glue that held medieval society together, and for you, it meant a constant balancing act of loyalty, service, and self-preservation. Your position wasn't entirely absolute. You were part of a hierarchical system, bound by duties to those above you. Just as others were bound to you, you owed loyalty and service to your overlord. This figure could be a more powerful count, a duke, or even the king himself. Your land, your title, and your very right to rule were held in exchange for specific services to this higher authority. This relationship wasn't just theoretical. It had very practical and often demanding implications. The most significant of these was the requirement to provide troops and resources in times of war. When your overlord called upon you, you were expected to muster a contingent of your own knights, squires, and foot soldiers, equipped and ready for campaign. This could mean drawing heavily on your own finances and manpower, leaving your own estate temporarily vulnerable. It's a bit like having to contribute half your entire company's staff to a project for your biggest client, and then paying for all their expenses yourself. Beyond military service, you might also owe other forms of service. This could include providing counsel to your overlord, attending his court at specific times of the year, or even offering hospitality if he or his retinue traveled through your lands. These were not optional suggestions. They were binding agreements, often sealed with oaths of fealty and homage. Breaking these oaths could lead to severe consequences, from the forfeiture of your land's estate to open rebellion and warfare. The threat of a more powerful lord marching his army onto your lands was a constant shadow in the background, ensuring compliance. This intricate system of mutual obligations, while providing stability, also created constant tension. You, as the vassal, were always trying to balance the demands of your overlord with the needs and security of your own domain. If your overlord's wars were unpopular or seemed to offer no benefit to your lands, resentment could simmer. This is where your political acumen, honed in those morning discussions, truly came into play. You had to know when to comply, when to negotiate, and when, perhaps, to subtly resist without incurring direct wrath. Historians still argue about the true power balance in these feudal relationships, debating whether vassals were largely subservient or if they held significant leverage against their overlords. One quirky tidbit about feudal obligations: sometimes, instead of providing troops, a lord could pay scutage, a payment of money in lieu of military service. This allowed a lord to avoid the personal risk and logistical headache of leading men into battle, and allowed the overlord to hire mercenary forces. It was the medieval equivalent of outsourcing your military duties, though probably less reliable than a modern contractor. This complex dance of duties, rights, and potential consequences ensured that the feudal allegiance was far more than just a historical footnote. It was a living, breathing contract that shaped every lord's strategic decisions and daily life. You were both master of your domain and servant to a higher power, a paradoxical existence that defined the very essence of medieval nobility. Flowing directly from your land ownership and the complex web of feudal obligations is your very real and pervasive judicial authority. As we touched upon earlier, you are more than just a landlord or a military commander. You are the embodiment of law and order within your domain. This isn't a theoretical power. It's a tangible, daily responsibility that gives you a profound degree of control over the lives of your tenants and subjects. Imagine being the absolute legal arbiter for thousands of people, with no higher court readily available to appeal to. At least not for the common folk. You hold a significant degree of legal authority over your tenants. This means that when disputes arise, when crimes are committed, or when societal norms are violated within your lands, it is you who hears the cases and administers justice. This could range from relatively minor transgressions, like a peasant being caught poaching a rabbit from your forest, an offense often taken very seriously, as it impacted your resources, to more severe crimes like theft, assault, or even murder. You are the final word on these matters, and your judgment for your people is akin to divine pronouncement. The mechanisms for dispensing this justice were often localized and customary. While some lords might have formal manorial courts, With a set structure, for many it was a more informal process, perhaps held in the great hall or an open space in the village. You would listen to complaints, hear testimonies from accusers and accused, and cross-examine witnesses. Your knowledge of local customs, precedent, and perhaps a healthy dose of common sense guided your decisions. The aim was not always punitive, but often restorative, to maintain peace, ensure social cohesion, and protect the productivity of your estate. A community constantly embroiled in internal conflict was bad for your bottom line, as well as your reputation. The punishments you might levy could vary widely. For minor offences, fines were common, conveniently adding to your estate's income. Public humiliation, such as being placed in the stocks or pillory, served as a strong social deterrent. For more serious crimes, physical punishments, mutilation, or even execution, though less frequent, were within your power. Historians still argue about the fairness and consistency of justice administered by medieval lords, with some emphasizing the arbitrary nature of such power and others pointing to a surprising degree of adherence to established customs and community expectations. One quirky tidbit about medieval justice: trial by combat was a legitimate, albeit rare, method of resolving disputes, especially for nobles accused of serious crimes. Instead of arguing with words, the accuser and accused would fight to the death or until surrender, with the victor presumed to be in the right due to divine intervention. While highly dramatic and certainly not an everyday occurrence, it highlights the deeply ingrained belief in God's judgment and the brutal realities of resolving conflict in an era without robust, centralized legal systems. Imagine having your parking ticket dispute settled with a sword fight. Certainly makes you think twice about where you leave your horse. Your judicial authority was a powerful tool for social control. It ensured that your directives were followed, that order was maintained, and that your subjects understood the boundaries of acceptable behavior. This constant exercise of power, day in and day out, permeated every level of your society, making your presence felt even in the most remote corners of your lands. It was a clear demonstration that you were not just a remote figure in a castle, but an active, decisive force in the lives of every individual under your protection and dominion. This ability to settle disputes and enforce rules was a crucial element in maintaining stability and preventing chaos in a world without modern policing or a unified national legal framework. Beyond the intricate webs of land and law, your very identity as a noble lord is inextricably linked to your military leadership. You are, first and foremost, a warrior, and the expectation to lead your men in battle is not merely a possibility, but a fundamental and often grim reality of your existence. Your castle is not just a home, it is a fortress, and your household includes a retinue of knights and armed retainers, specifically trained for conflict. You are expected to lead your men in battle when required, a duty that stems directly from your feudal obligations to your overlord. Whether it's defending your own lands from raiding parties or ambitious neighbors, or answering a call to arms from your king for a larger campaign, your place is at the forefront. This isn't a desk job where you send others to do the heavy lifting. You are expected to don your armor, mount your warhorse, and ride into the fray, risking your life alongside your men. Your earlier weapon practice sessions weren't for show. They were rehearsals for this very real and terrifying possibility. Imagine having to prepare for actual combat as part of your weekly routine. Suddenly, that spin class doesn't seem so bad. Your role as a military leader involves several key aspects. Firstly, There's the raising and organizing of troops. You command your personal household knights, but also have the right to call upon your vassals to provide their own contingents of armed men. This requires significant logistical planning, ensuring they are properly equipped, fed, and ready to march. Secondly, there's the strategic planning of campaigns or defenses. You would confer with your most experienced knights and military advisors, discussing tactics, assessing enemy strengths, and choosing the most advantageous terrain. You're essentially the medieval equivalent of a general, but with the added pressure of potentially dying on the battlefield yourself. Thirdly, and perhaps most crucially, is the act of leading by example on the battlefield. Your presence at the head of your troops, wielding your sword or lance, inspires courage and loyalty. A lord who fights bravely alongside his men commands far more respect and dedication than one who simply directs from a distance. The sight of your banner, bearing your family's coat of arms, rallying in the thick of combat, could turn the tide of a skirmish. This direct, personal involvement in warfare is a defining characteristic of medieval nobility. Historians still argue about the effectiveness of individual noble leadership in large-scale medieval battles, with some emphasizing the chaos of the melee and others pointing to specific instances where a lord's courage or tactical genius made a decisive difference. One quirky tidbit about medieval military leadership: before a major battle, it was common for lords to give stirring speeches, often invoking God and chivalry to bolster the morale of their troops. These speeches were less about detailed strategy and more about emotional appeal, designed to ignite religious fervor and fighting spirit. Imagine trying to deliver a motivational speech while wearing 50 pounds of steel, probably with a few nervous butterflies fluttering in your stomach. It puts a whole new spin on public speaking, doesn't it? The sounds of impending battle are stark: the chilling blast of trumpets, the thunder of hooves, the shouts of men, and the inevitable clash of steel on steel. The air would be thick with dust, sweat, and the metallic temps of blood. This isn't a romanticized vision of warfare. It's a brutal, chaotic, and often short affair, decided by courage, discipline, and sheer brute force. And as the Lord, you are squarely in the midst of it, responsible for the lives of your men and the future of your lineage. This heavy burden of military leadership is always present, even on the most peaceful of days, shaping your training, your alliances, and your constant vigilance. You are a protector, and sometimes a destroyer, all in the service of your domain. Beyond the clang of steel and the rustle of parchment, your life as a noble lord is deeply immersed in an intricate web of social and political influence. Your nobility isn't just a title. It's a prominent position in society, granting you authority that extends far beyond the confines of your castle walls. You are a central figure in the power dynamics of your region, a person whose opinions and decisions carry significant weight, impacting not only your immediate subjects but also your peers and even your overlord. This influence manifests in numerous ways. Firstly, you hold influence over your vassals. These are the lesser lords or knights who hold land from you in exchange for their own fealty and service. Your relationship with them is a mirror of your relationship with your own overlord. But with you at the top, you command their loyalty, expect their military service, and often act as their direct superior in legal disputes that spill beyond their own small holdings. Maintaining this network of loyal vassals is crucial, as they form the bedrock of your local power base, providing the manpower and resources that augment your own. You regularly entertain them at your court, solidify alliances through strategic marriages involving their children, and listen to their petitions, ensuring their continued support. It's like managing a complex franchisee system where loyalty is earned through a mix of expectation, benefits, and a healthy dose of medieval charm. Secondly, your influence is felt strongly in the political affairs of your region. You are not an isolated entity. You participate in regional councils, assemblies of other lords and bishops, where matters affecting the wider county or duchy are discussed. You contribute to decisions regarding taxation, defense, and even the enforcement of royal decrees. Your voice carries weight, and your ability to form alliances with other powerful families can significantly swing the outcome of such discussions. This requires diplomatic skill, a keen understanding of regional politics, and the ability to persuade and compromise, or sometimes to simply assert your will through sheer force of personality and implied power. Your social influence extends to matters of prestige and reputation. You are expected to uphold the ideals of chivalry and honor, acting as a paragon of noble conduct. Your actions, both public and private, are scrutinized. A reputation for wisdom, courage, and generosity enhances your standing, attracting more followers and strengthening your alliances. Conversely, a reputation for cruelty, cowardice, or avarice could weaken your position, leading to discontent among your subjects and scorn from your peers. It's like being a constant public figure in a very small, very judgmental town, where everyone knows everyone else's business. Historians still argue about the true extent to which social status dictated political power in the Middle Ages versus raw military strength or wealth. But one quirky tidbit about medieval social influence: elaborate gift-giving was a common and essential practice for cementing alliances and showing deference. A lord might send a particularly fine hunting dog, a richly embroidered garment, or even a rare falcon to another noble to symbolize friendship or to smooth over a dispute. It was far more intricate than sending a fruit basket. Each gift was laden with symbolic meaning and political undertones, making every exchange a carefully calculated diplomatic maneuver. The sheer network of people you interact with daily, from your most humble serf to your powerful overlord, from neighboring abbots to distant kin, highlights the constant need for you to project authority, beneficence, and strength. Your presence at feasts, your participation in tournaments, and your very bearing in public spaces all contribute to this aura of influence. This position of prominence is a heavy one, demanding constant vigilance and a keen understanding of human nature, for the intricate dance of social and political power is never-ending in the medieval world. You are not just a local ruler. You are a key player in a much larger, often dangerous, game. Having explored the broader strokes of your lordly duties, let's now draw closer to the heart of your domain, the family life in the castle. While your public duties demand much of your time and energy, the castle is also your home, and your family forms the core of your private world. However, this is not family life as you might understand it today, with cozy evenings watching TV or casual weekend outings. For a medieval noble, family life, while important, often blends seamlessly with public duties, driven by considerations of lineage, alliance, and continuity. Your immediate family typically consists of your wife, the lady of the castle, and your children. While affection certainly existed, marriages among the nobility were almost exclusively strategic arrangements, designed to forge alliances, consolidate land, or secure political advantage. You likely had little say in choosing your spouse, just as your children would have little say in theirs. Your wife, the lady, holds a formidable position herself, often managing the internal affairs of the household, which we will delve into. Further, your interactions with her, while personal, are often imbued with an understanding of your shared responsibilities to the lineage and the estate. It's a partnership, perhaps less about romantic love and more about shared duty to the family name. Your children, particularly your sons, are viewed primarily as the future of your lineage. From a young age, their upbringing is intensely focused on preparing them for their roles in medieval society. Sons would typically be sent away from home around the age of 7 or 8 to serve as pages in the household of another noble, perhaps your overlord or an ally. This wasn't because you didn't love them. It was considered the best way for them to learn chivalry, courtly manners, and martial skills from someone other than their own parents, thereby avoiding spoiling them. Imagine sending your 7-year-old off to live with someone else's family for years, all in the name of character building. Suddenly, boarding school seems quite mild. Your daughters, while also educated, would be groomed for marriage, often staying at home longer. They would learn household management from their mother, as well as skills like embroidery, music, and perhaps reading and writing. Their future, too, would be determined by strategic alliances, their marriages carefully negotiated to benefit your family's standing. They were valuable assets in the intricate diplomatic game of the medieval world, their hands given in exchange for land or influence. Even within the castle, privacy was a luxury. While you had your solar, communal living was the norm for much of the household. The great hall, as you remember from breakfast and supper, was a multifunctional space, bustling with activity from dawn till dusk. Even your own chamber might see servants or guards present, highlighting the constant blurring of private and public life for a lord. Historians still argue about the emotional depth of medieval family bonds, with some scholars pointing to the practical, dynastic nature of relationships, while others find evidence of deep affection and care within these structured families. One quirky tidbit about medieval noble family life: wet nurses were commonly employed for infants, even among the nobility, often to ensure the noble mother would quickly become fertile again to produce more heirs, particularly sons. This highlights the immense pressure on noble women to fulfill their primary role of continuing the family line. So, while your child might be sleeping in a cradle just down the hall, their earliest nurturing might come from someone entirely different. It certainly puts a different spin on it. Takes a village, doesn't it? Despite the formality and the strategic imperatives, moments of genuine warmth, affection, and shared laughter undoubtedly punctuated the routines, weaving a human element into the otherwise rigid tapestry of noble life. While your public face as a lord is constantly engaged in administration, justice, and warfare, the true engine room of your castle, often unseen by external eyes, is managed by your wife. The role of the lady, her position is formidable, demanding, and absolutely vital to the smooth functioning and prosperity of your household and, by extension, your entire estate. She is not merely an ornament or a passive recipient of your wealth. She is a powerful manager and a crucial partner in the enterprise of your noble house. The lady of the castle is primarily responsible for the internal household management. Imagine running a large, self-sufficient complex that houses dozens, if not hundreds, of people, from knights and squires to servants, cooks, laundresses, and various craftsmen. She oversees the daily operations of the kitchens, ensuring their is enough food to feed everyone and that meals are prepared efficiently. This involves managing vast stores of provisions, overseeing the butchering of animals, the salting of meat, the brewing of ale, and the baking of bread. It's a logistical challenge on a grand scale, far more complex than planning a weekly grocery run. She might even oversee the castle gardens, ensuring fresh herbs and vegetables are available when in season, beyond food. The lady also manages the castle's staff. She is responsible for hiring and overseeing the servants, ensuring their discipline and assigning their duties. From the chambermaids to the laundresses, from the stable boys to the scullery maids, their daily lives and work fall under her purview. This requires significant organizational skills, a keen eye for detail, and the ability to command respect and obedience from a diverse workforce. It's like being the CEO of a hospitality empire, but one where all your employees also live on site and sometimes need to defend the premises with pitchforks. Her duties often extend to the health and welfare of the household. She might oversee the castle's infirmary, if one exists, or personally tend to the sick or injured, using traditional herbal remedies. She is responsible for the clothing and linens, ensuring they are spun, woven, sewn, and repaired. This involves managing seamstresses, weavers, and other artisans within the castle. She might even instruct the younger noblewomen and her own daughters in these essential skills, preparing them for their future roles. The lady's influence isn't confined to the domestic sphere. She often acts as your proxy when you are away, on campaign or at court, exercising authority over the estate in your absence. She might even be responsible for overseeing minor legal disputes, particularly those involving women, or representing your interests in local negotiations. Her administrative competence is directly tied to the stability of your domain. Historians still argue about the true extent of medieval noblewomen's power and autonomy, with some emphasizing their confinement to domestic roles and others highlighting their significant economic and political influence behind the scenes. One quirky tidbit about the lady's role: she was often in charge of the castle's strong room or treasury, holding the keys to the coffers and the most valuable possessions. This made her the ultimate financial controller of the household, a position of immense trust and power, quite literally holding the purse strings of the entire operation. So, while you might be out slaying dragons, she's in the castle making sure the bills are paid and the dragon-slaying budget is balanced. Her contribution, though often less visible in historical chronicles focusing on battles and kings, was absolutely fundamental to the daily reality and long-term success of any medieval noble house. She was the invisible architect of your comfort and the quiet force behind your continued prosperity. Following the crucial contributions of the lady, let's turn our attention to the future of your lineage, the children's education and future. For a medieval noble lord, children, especially sons, were not just beloved family members, they were strategic assets, the direct link to the continuation of your house, your lands, and your power. Their upbringing was therefore meticulously planned and rigorously executed, far more focused on practical skills and social positioning than on academic pursuits in the modern sense. Your sons, as mentioned before, would typically begin their formal education outside the home at a very young age, often between 7 and 10. They would be sent to serve as pages in the household of another noble, perhaps your overlord, a powerful ally, or even a relative. This wasn't a punishment. It was considered an essential part of their training. In this new environment, They would learn proper courtly manners, etiquette, and the beginnings of chivalry. They would serve the lord and lady of that household, running errands, waiting at table, and learning humility and discipline. Imagine your 7-year-old being sent off to be a glorified waiter for a duke he barely knows, and being expected to do it with enthusiasm. It certainly instills a sense of responsibility early on. As they grew older, usually around the age of 14, your sons would advance to the role of squire. This was a more serious stage of their military education. They would become personal attendants to a knight, assisting him in battle, helping him with his armor, and caring for his horses and weapons. They would continue their martial training, honing their skills with swords, lances, and bows, learning tactics and strategy firsthand. They would also receive instruction in riding, hunting, and perhaps a rudimentary education in reading, writing, often Latin, the language of the church, and scholarship, and basic arithmetic from a resident chaplain or tutor. The goal was to transform them into capable, honorable, and loyal knights, ready to inherit your mantle of military leadership and land management. Your daughters, while typically remaining at home until marriage, also received a practical and often rigorous education. Under the tutelage of your lady, they would learn all aspects of household management, preparing them to run their own castles one day. This included overseeing servants, managing provisions, and understanding the intricate logistics of a noble household. They would also learn skills considered essential for noble women: embroidery, weaving, music, dancing, and possibly rudimentary medicine and herbalism. Literacy, while not universally expected, became increasingly common, allowing them to read religious texts or courtly romances. Their future, however, was almost entirely dictated by strategic arranged marriages. Your role, as their father, would be to negotiate the most advantageous match, securing alliances, land, or prestige for your family. Historians still argue about the relative happiness and agency of women in these arranged marriages, with some scholars pointing to strong bonds developing over time, and others highlighting the lack of personal choice. One quirky tidbit about medieval noble education: sometimes noble children would learn to read not from books, but from intricately illustrated tapestries and murals that adorned castle walls, which often depicted biblical stories, historical events, or moral allegories. It was a visual education before the age of widespread literacy, making the castle itself a living textbook. So, while your son might be away polishing a knight's armor, your daughter might be learning about the Trojan War just by looking at the dining hall decor. This meticulous preparation, whether martial or domestic, ensured that your lineage would continue to thrive, upholding the power and prestige of your noble house for generations to come. Stepping beyond the immediate confines of your family, let's broaden our perspective to the bustling microcosm that is your castle. Castle life beyond the Lord is a vibrant, intricate ecosystem teeming with diverse individuals, each playing a vital role in the daily functioning and security of your domain. It's far more than just a residence. It's a self-contained community, a hub of activity that supports your noble lifestyle and projects your power. At the highest tier of your household, beneath your immediate family and key officials like the estate manager and chaplain, are your knights and squires. These are the core of your military strength, residing within the castle, training daily, and ever ready to defend your lands or accompany you to war. They are a constant presence, their armor glinting, their voices echoing in the courtyard as they practice. Their loyalty is paramount, and you are responsible for their upkeep, feeding them, housing them, and providing their equipment. They are your chosen warriors, and their well-being is a reflection of your capacity as a lord. Below them is a vast array of servants and retainers, each with specific duties. There are the cooks and scullery maids laboring in the smoke-filled kitchens, preparing vast quantities of food for the entire household. You hear their clatter and smell their efforts throughout the day. There are laundresses responsible for washing and mending the household's extensive textiles, often in rather rudimentary conditions. Stable hands tend to your precious horses and other livestock in the bailey, ensuring they are fed, groomed, and ready for use. Porters guard the gates, carpenters maintain the wooden structures, and masons mend the stone walls. Each person, no matter how humble their task, contributes to the castle's complex machinery. Imagine managing a hotel, a restaurant, a farm, and a military barracks all in one building, with hundreds of people living and working within its walls. That's your castle. Life for these individuals is highly structured and disciplined. They live according to the castle's rhythm, dictated by the sun, the seasons, and your own daily routine. Their meals are communal, often taken in the great hall after you and your immediate family have finished. Their quarters might be cramped and less comfortable than yours, perhaps sleeping on straw mattresses in shared dormitories or even in designated corners of the great hall. Privacy, as you experienced in your own retirement, is a luxury afforded to very few. The atmosphere within the castle is a constant blend of noise and purposeful activity. You hear the ringing of hammers from the smithy, the distant shouts of men-at-arms drilling, the lowing of cattle, the chatter of servants, and the ever-present sound of footsteps on stone. The air carries the sense of wood smoke, cooking food, damp stone, and perhaps the faint smell of animal waste from the bailey. It's a sensory immersion, a living, breathing testament to the self-contained nature of a medieval stronghold. Historians still argue about the true social mobility within medieval castle households, debating whether it was possible for individuals from lower ranks to rise significantly through talent and dedication. One quirky tidbit about castle life. Beyond the lord, many castles had resident fools or jesters who, while entertaining, also served a vital function. They could often deliver uncomfortable truths or satirical commentary to the lord or guests in a way that no one else dared, acting as a kind of medieval pressure valve for courtly tensions. Imagine having a personal comedian who's also your unofficial truth-teller. It's certainly one way to get unfiltered feedback. This bustling community, often hidden behind the imposing stone walls, is the silent, tireless force that enables you, the noble lord, to fulfill your myriad duties and maintain the prosperity and power of your domain. Without their labor and loyalty, your castle would be an empty shell, and your authority a mere whisper. Within the bustling ecosystem of your castle, the constant demand for sustenance brings us to a fundamental and often complex aspect of your daily life: the food and provisions, logistics, feeding a medieval castle which could house anywhere, from dozens to hundreds of people, including your family, knights, squires, and a vast array of servants, was an immense logistical challenge that required meticulous planning and continuous effort. There was no instant grocery delivery, no refrigeration, and certainly no corner store. Your castle essentially operated as a large, self-sufficient farm and processing plant. The vast majority of your food supplies came directly from your own lands, collected as rents in kind from your tenants, or produced directly by your own domain farms. You would have large storerooms, larders, and cellars dedicated to holding these provisions. Imagine cavernous spaces filled with sacks of grain, barrels of salted meat and fish, rounds of cheese, and possibly dried or smoked vegetables. The air in these spaces would be cool and dry, heavy with the mingled scents of grains, salt, and aging provisions. The annual harvest was a critical time, dictating the quantity of grain, vegetables, and fodder that would need to be stored for the coming year. Your estate manager, working closely with your lady, would oversee the collection and inventory of these vital supplies. This wasn't just about stocking shelves. It was about ensuring the survival of your entire household through the lean months of winter and early spring. A miscalculation, a poor harvest, or unexpected spoilage could lead to severe hardship, even famine. It's like managing a massive, year-long catering event where failure to plan means everyone goes hungry, and there's no option for last-minute takeout. Meat, a staple of the noble diet, presented its own set of challenges. Animals would be slaughtered, and their meat preserved through salting, smoking, or drying. This was a labor-intensive process, requiring specialized skills. Fish, whether fresh from your ponds or rivers, or salted and dried, also formed a crucial part of the diet, especially during periods of religious fasting when meat was forbidden. Bread, the absolute foundation of the medieval diet, was baked daily in the castle's own bakehouse, consuming vast quantities of flour from your mills. The constant aroma of fresh bread would be a comforting presence, signaling the ongoing production of this essential food. Brewing ale was another critical task, as ale was consumed in large quantities by everyone in the household, providing calories and a safer alternative to often contaminated water. Your brewers would work tirelessly, often in designated areas of the castle, their activities adding to the constant hum of production. Historians still argue about the typical caloric intake of a medieval noble household, with some suggesting it was far higher than modern diets, reflecting the physically demanding lives of the era. One quirky tidbit about medieval food preservation: in addition to salting and smoking, noble households sometimes used honey as a preservative, particularly for fruits or certain meats. While delicious, imagine having to explain to your family that tonight's dinner is honey-glazed ball that's been sitting around for 6 months. It really puts a sweet spin on long-term food storage. The constant cycle of acquiring, preserving, and preparing food was a relentless, year-round endeavor, a testament to the organizational prowess required to keep a medieval castle fed and functioning. Every meal served, every loaf of bread baked, was a small victory in the ongoing battle against hunger and scarcity. Having discussed the vital, yet often unsung, logistics of feeding your castle, let's consider something a bit more personal, yet equally indicative of your status: clothing and appearance. For a medieval noble lord, what you wore was far more than just protection from the elements. It was a carefully curated statement of your wealth, power, and social standing. However, while your attire signified status, comfort is often a secondary consideration in medieval fashion. Imagine valuing elaborate sleeves over the ability to actually, use your arms freely. Your daily wardrobe would consist of multiple layers, starting with an undertunic made of linen or fine wool, designed to be soft against the skin and to absorb sweat. Over this, you would wear a longer tunic, perhaps of finer wool or even silk for more formal occasions, often brightly dyed with expensive pigments. Colors like crimson, deep blue, or vibrant green, derived from costly dyes. immediately marked you as a person of high status, in stark contrast to the drab, undyed woolens of the peasantry. Imagine trying to explain to a fashion influencer today that your power suit involves 3 layers of itchy wool and no breathable fabrics. Your legs would be covered by hose, often tied to your bras, a type of underwear or a belt, and your feet would be clad in soft leather shoes or boots. Over your tunic, especially when moving through the castle or engaging in less active duties, you might wear a surcoat, a long, flowing garment, sometimes sleeveless, or perhaps lined with fur for warmth and added prestige. The amount and quality of fur, ermine, sable, or squirrel were direct indicators of your wealth and noble rank. It's the medieval equivalent of wearing a designer label, but instead of a logo, it's a dead animal draped over your shoulders. For more formal occasions, like feasting or receiving important guests, your clothing would become even more elaborate. Jewels might adorn your garments, and rich embroidery, depicting your family's crest or symbolic motifs, would add to the splendor. These outfits were heavy, often restrictive, and certainly not designed for quick movements or ease of cleaning. You'd need assistance to get into and out of them, a daily reminder of your exalted position. Historians still argue about the precise degree to which sumptuary laws dictating what different social classes could wear, were enforced, and whether nobles frequently flaunted them. Beyond the clothes themselves, your appearance extended to your hair and grooming. Men often wore their hair moderately long, sometimes with a clean-shaven face or a neatly trimmed beard, depending on prevailing fashion and personal preference. Hygiene, while not up to modern standards, remember that. Occasional bathing was still important for a lord. You wouldn't want to receive guests smelling like the stable. You might use aromatic herbs or waters to freshen yourself, attempting to mask the inevitable odors of medieval life. One quirky tidbit about medieval noble fashion: sometimes, shoes for the very wealthy could have extremely long, pointed toes, known as poulaines. These could be so long that they had to be stuffed with moss or whalebone and even tied to the wearer's knee to keep them from tripping. Imagine trying to walk gracefully, let alone ride a horse or fight, in shoes that extend a foot or more beyond your toes. It certainly puts walking a mile in their shoes into a whole new, hilarious perspective. The effort and resources invested in your clothing and grooming underscore the constant performance of nobility. Every stitch, every dye, every carefully trimmed beard was a deliberate projection of your status and power, a visual language understood by everyone in your medieval world. While your noble status affords you a life of relative comfort compared to your peasantry, it doesn't grant you immunity from the harsh realities of medieval life, particularly concerning health and medieval medicine. In an era before antibiotics, widespread sanitation, or even a clear understanding of germ theory, facing illness and injury was a constant source of anxiety, and the medical knowledge available to you was, to put it mildly, often peculiar by modern standards. A simple cut, a common cold, or a bad fever could escalate into a life-threatening condition. Infections, which we easily treat today, were deadly scourges. The air in your castle, despite your wealth, might be damp and draughty, contributing to respiratory ailments. The food, though abundant, lacked modern nutritional understanding, and preservation methods like heavy salting could lead to other health issues over time. You might experience chronic aches from dampness, joint pain from riding or heavy armor, and dental problems that were agonizing with no effective pain relief or modern dentistry. Imagine having a persistent toothache, with only a strong ale as a painkiller. Suddenly, a visit to the dentist doesn't seem so daunting. When illness struck, your first recourse would likely be your castle's chaplain or a resident physician. If you were wealthy enough to retain one, more commonly you would rely on local healers, often women with deep knowledge of herbal remedies. They would use concoctions of plants and natural substances, some of which had genuine medicinal properties, while others were based on superstition or outdated theories. For example, willow bark was used for pain relief, a precursor to aspirin. But they might also try bleeding you with leeches to balance your humors, believing illness was caused by an imbalance of the 4 bodily fluids: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. Historians still argue about the true effectiveness of medieval medical practices, with some noting surprising successes with certain herbal treatments, while others highlight the often harmful interventions based on flawed theories. For injuries, especially those sustained in training or battle, your recovery would be a testament to your own resilience and sheer luck. Broken bones might be set, but often imperfectly, leading to lifelong deformities. Deep wounds could easily fester, leading to gangrene and amputation, performed without anesthesia beyond perhaps a strong drink or a blow to the head. The prospect of surgery, even a minor one, was terrifying and often fatal. One quirky tidbit about medieval medicine: uroscopy, the practice of diagnosing illnesses by examining a patient's urine, was incredibly common. Physicians would meticulously inspect the color, clarity, and even smell of urine samples, believing it offered profound insights into internal ailments. Imagine your doctor today asking for a urine sample and then just staring at it intensely before giving you a diagnosis. It certainly makes you appreciate modern lab tests. This constant vulnerability to disease and injury underscores the precariousness of life, even for a noble lord. Despite your wealth and power, you were just as susceptible to the ravages of illness as your lowliest peasant, perhaps even more so if you participated frequently in warfare or grand feasts that could spread disease. The fear of contagion, the lack of effective cures, and the reliance on rudimentary treatments meant that health was a daily concern, a silent shadow lurking behind every feast and every diplomatic triumph. You prayed for good health, knowing that the smallest ailment could quickly turn into a fatal one, making every morning a quiet thanksgiving for another day of vitality. From the intimate anxieties of health, let's now consider a broader aspect of your life as a medieval lord that often brought its own set of dangers and discomforts. Travel and journeys. While much of your life is centered around your castle, you are by no means confined to it. Journeys, whether for political reasons, military campaigns, or simply to visit other parts of your sprawling estates, were a necessary but arduous part of your noble duties. There were no smooth highways, no comfortable carriages, and certainly no high-speed trains. Your primary mode of transport would be horseback. You, your knights, and your most trusted retainers would ride, often for many hours, sometimes days, across varying terrain. Roads, if they existed beyond mere tracks, were often poorly maintained, riddled with ruts, mud, or dust, depending on the season. Rivers might need to be forded, or you'd rely on rudimentary ferries. Imagine enduring hours of jarring movement, constantly exposed to the elements, all while wearing multiple layers of clothing and perhaps even light armor. It makes a modern long-haul flight seem like a spa day. These journeys were not just uncomfortable, they were often dangerous. The threat of brigands or rival lords ambushing your party was a constant concern, especially when carrying valuables or traveling through disputed territories. You would always travel with an armed escort, proportional to the importance of your journey and the perceived risk. Scout parties might ride ahead to ensure the path was clear. Every rustle in the trees, every distant sound, could be a potential threat. You were essentially living in a constant state of low-level alert whenever you left the safety of your castle walls. The pace of travel was slow. A journey of 20 to 30 miles in a day would be considered good progress for a large retinue. This meant that even relatively short distances could take days, requiring careful planning for overnight stops. You might stay in other friendly castles, monasteries, or even fortified manor houses along the way, relying on the hospitality of others. However, if no such accommodation was available, you might have to camp in the open, enduring the elements and the discomfort of sleeping on the ground. Historians still argue about the speed and efficiency of medieval communication over long distances, often relying on relays of riders. One quirky tidbit about medieval travel: when traveling, noble lords sometimes carried portable altars or shrines with them, allowing them to perform their daily religious observances even on the road. This highlights the pervasive nature of faith in their lives, ensuring spiritual duties weren't neglected even during arduous journeys. Imagine bringing your entire prayer room with you on a business trip. The logistics of feeding and watering your horses, your men, and yourself on the road were immense, requiring careful provisioning and reliance on local resources. These journeys, while physically taxing and fraught with peril, were essential for maintaining your political network, overseeing distant holdings, participating in military campaigns, or attending court. They broadened your understanding of the world beyond your immediate castle, connecting you to the wider tapestry of the medieval kingdom. Every ache in your bones, every splash of mud on your clothes, was a reminder of the vastness of your responsibilities and the raw, untamed nature of the world you inhabited. Transitioning from the physical demands and dangers of travel, let's delve into an aspect of your medieval life that permeates every single hour of your day, regardless of your location: your religious life. For a noble lord in the Middle Ages, religion was not just a weekly observance or a personal belief. It was the fundamental framework upon which society was built, shaping your worldview, your moral code, and your daily routines. It was, quite simply, omnipresent from the moment you awoke to the sound of the rooster until you finally retired for the night. Religious rituals and observances punctuated your day. As we discussed, your day began with morning mass in your castle chapel, followed by a meal. It concluded with evening prayers, often vespers or compline, performed before you finally went to sleep. You might also pause for prayer at specific canonical hours throughout the day, even amidst your administrative duties or weapon practice. These were not mere suggestions. They were deeply ingrained habits, expected of every pious lord. Imagine setting an alarm on your phone not for work, but for your next scheduled prayer. Beyond these daily devotions, you, as a noble lord, were expected to be a patron of the church. This meant contributing financially to local monasteries, churches, and cathedrals on your lands. You might endow them with land, provide funding for their construction or repair, or offer precious gifts like relics or illuminated manuscripts. This wasn't just charity. It was a way to accrue spiritual merit, ensure prayers were said for your soul and the souls of your ancestors, and publicly demonstrate your piety and adherence to Christian values. It also solidified your relationship with powerful bishops, and abbots who often held significant land and influence themselves. Religious ceremonies were grand public affairs, often attended by your entire household and local peasantry. Feasts of the church calendar, such as Easter, Christmas, and various saints' days, were celebrated with solemn masses, processions, and often communal meals. These events served to reinforce community bonds, provide a sense of shared identity, and educate the populace in Christian doctrine. You, as the Lord, would be a central figure in these celebrations, leading your people in worship and demonstrating your unwavering faith. The moral teachings of the Church profoundly influenced your decisions, both private and public. Concepts like chivalry, honor, and justice were often intertwined with Christian virtues. While medieval life was undoubtedly brutal at times, the Church constantly preached against excessive cruelty, advocating for charity towards the poor and protection for the vulnerable, at least in theory. You would consult your chaplain on matters of conscience, seek absolution for your sins, and often make vows to undertake pilgrimages or even crusades, depending on the fervor of the times. Historians still argue about the true depth of individual piety versus the pragmatic, political utility of religious observance for medieval lords, debating how much was genuine faith and how much was a necessary performance of power. One quirky tidbit about medieval religious life: relics, believed to be physical remains or possessions of saints, were incredibly important and highly sought after. Owning a relic, even a tiny fragment of bone or cloth, was thought to bring spiritual blessings and protection to your castle and lineage. Noble families would go to extraordinary lengths, spending vast sums or even engaging in shadowy dealings to acquire these sacred objects, making your chapel a bit of a holy treasure chest. Imagine having a piece of a saint's finger as your most prized possession. It's certainly more unique than a family heirloom. This deep, pervasive influence of Christianity shaped not only your worldview, but the very fabric of your daily existence, providing a constant backdrop of spiritual purpose to your demanding life as a lord. Having explored the omnipresent role of religion in your medieval life, let's now consider how those deeply held beliefs, combined with your immense power and resources, often manifested in tangible acts, your patronage of the Church. For a noble lord, supporting the Church was not merely a matter of piety. It was a complex interplay of spiritual devotion, social prestige, political maneuvering, and a very practical investment in your immortal soul and the prosperity of your lineage. You were expected to be a generous benefactor to local monasteries, abbeys, and parish churches located within your vast domain or even further afield. This patronage could take many forms. You might endow them with grants of land, effectively donating portions of your own valuable territory to monastic orders or ecclesiastical institutions. This provided them with a source of income from the tenants on that land and ensured their continued existence and ability to pray for your family. Imagine giving away a significant chunk of your most profitable real estate, not for immediate financial return, but for future spiritual dividends. Beyond land, your patronage often involved significant financial contributions for the construction, repair, or expansion of churches, chapels, and monastic buildings. The soaring arches of a newly built church, or the intricate stained glass windows of an abbey within your lands, were direct testaments to your wealth and devotion. You might commission skilled artisans to create elaborate altarpieces, intricate carvings, or beautifully illuminated manuscripts for your castle, chapel, or a nearby monastery. These were not just acts of charity. They were also highly visible public displays of your piety, enhancing your reputation and prestige among both your peers and your subjects. A lord who openly supported the church was seen as a righteous and honorable leader, securing respect and loyalty. Your relationship with the church was symbiotic. While you provided material support, the church offered spiritual legitimacy and practical services. Monasteries often served as centers of learning, housing libraries and scribes who could read and write, vital skills in an otherwise largely illiterate society. They might also provide rudimentary medical care, offer hospitality to travelers, and serve as safe havens in times of conflict. More importantly, the monks and priests within these institutions would offer constant prayers for your soul and the souls of your ancestors and descendants. In a world deeply concerned with the afterlife, securing these prayers was a crucial spiritual investment, believed to shorten time in purgatory and ensure a place in heaven. Historians still debate the primary motivation behind noble patronage of the church, whether it was genuine spiritual conviction, a calculated political move to gain influence with powerful bishops and abbots, or a blend of both. But one quirky tidbit about medieval church patronage: lords would sometimes donate particularly unusual or valuable items to churches, not just land or gold. This could include rare animals, exotic spices from distant lands, or even unique pieces of armor or weaponry, all offered as pious gifts to God and perhaps to subtly show off their worldly acquisitions. Imagine donating your pet falcon to the local monastery, expecting them to use it for holy hunting. This deep and multifaceted relationship with the church was an inescapable part of your noble identity, constantly shaping your financial decisions, your social standing, and your ultimate destiny. Having explored the deep ties between your noble status and your religious patronage, let's turn our attention to one of the most vibrant and essential aspects of medieval noble life: feasting and entertainment. These weren't just casual gatherings. They were elaborate, multisensory experiences, vital for social bonding, political networking, and the sheer enjoyment of life after the rigorous demands of your daily duties. Your castle's great hall, which served so many functional purposes by day, truly came alive as a center of revelry by night. A medieval feast was a spectacle. The tables would groan under the weight of successive courses, far beyond just the initial supper. While the early dishes might be hearty roasted meats, like venison, boar, or beef, later courses would showcase your wealth and the skill of your cooks with more exotic or labor-intensive fare. Imagine intricately prepared pies filled with spiced meats, whole roasted swans or peacocks, sometimes redressed with their feathers for dramatic presentation, or delicate jellies molded into fantastical shapes. These were not merely meals, they were culinary art, designed to impress and delight. Wine and ale flowed freely, poured from large wooden or silver tankards, often consumed in copious amounts, contributing to the boisterous atmosphere. The air, thick with the rich aromas of roasting meat, sweet pastries, and the ever-present wood smoke from the massive hearth, would be a feast in itself. As the food was consumed, the entertainment would begin in earnest. Musicians were indispensable, playing a variety of instruments: lutes, harps, pipes, and early forms of viols would fill the great hall with melodies ranging from lively dance tunes that encouraged spontaneous movement to poignant ballads of love and chivalry. You might have a resident minstrel, or you might welcome traveling performers who brought new songs and stories from distant lands. The ability to provide good music was a mark of a refined household, and you, as the lord, would take pride in the quality of your entertainers. Beyond music, jesters and fools were common figures, providing comic relief and often acting as social commentators. With their motley attire and sharp wit, they could tell jokes, perform simple magic tricks, or even deliver thinly veiled criticisms of guests or even yourself, all under the protective guise of their role. Acrobats, tumblers, and jugglers might also perform, dazzling your guests with their physical prowess. Storytellers would captivate the audience with epic poems, local legends, and humorous anecdotes, transporting listeners to worlds of adventure and romance. It was a live variety show, far more interactive and immediate than any modern form of mass entertainment. Truly a unique medieval experience. These elaborate feasts served multiple critical functions. Firstly, they were a powerful display of your wealth and status. The sheer quantity and quality of food, drink, and entertainment broadcasted your prosperity and generosity to all assembled, reinforcing your position at the top of the local social hierarchy. Secondly, they were crucial for social bonding and political networking. Sharing a meal, laughing at a jester's antics, or dancing together helped to solidify loyalty among your knights and retainers, smooth over minor disputes with neighbors, and forge new alliances through shared conviviality. Historians still argue about the true social dynamics at medieval feasts, with some suggesting strict adherence to seating hierarchies and formal etiquette, while others emphasize the more raucous and communal aspects, especially as the evening wore on. One quirky tidbit about medieval feasting: subtleties were elaborate. Edible sculptures made from sugar, marzipan, or pastry, often depicting mythical creatures, castles, or heraldic symbols. These were brought out between courses as a visual spectacle and a further demonstration of the host's wealth and culinary artistry before being consumed. Imagine your dessert course being a giant, sugary dragon, certainly a memorable end to a meal. These evenings of feasting and entertainment were vital periods of release and celebration, providing a much-needed counterpoint to the relentless demands of medieval governance and warfare, and showcasing your castle not just as a fortress, but as a vibrant center of noble life. As the grand feast and lively entertainment of the evening gradually wind down, and the last of the minstrels strum their final chords, the castle slowly transitions into its nighttime phase. The robust revelry gives way to a more subdued atmosphere, a gradual dimming of lights and a quiet settling of the household. This period, leading up to your retirement and rest, is essential for rejuvenation, but also carries its own unique medieval considerations regarding security and, surprisingly, the concept of privacy. The first step in this winding down involves the departure of any remaining guests who do not reside within your castle. While many noble guests would have their own chambers prepared, visiting merchants or less important individuals might leave, often under escort, if the hour is not too late. The great hall, once a cacophony of sound, begins to empty. Servants start the arduous task of clearing away the remnants of the feast, a monumental effort given the scale of medieval dining. The tables might be taken down or simply wiped clean, ready for another day. The rushes on the floor, now probably trampled and soiled, might be swept and replaced, or at least turned over to present a fresher surface. The hearth fires, which had roared throughout the evening, are carefully banked to conserve precious fuel, casting long dancing shadows on the stone walls as their light fades. For you, the lord, and your immediate family, the movement from the great hall to your private chambers is a deliberate one. Your personal attendants, your valet, and perhaps a few trusted pages would be on hand to assist you. This is often a more intimate moment, away from the public gaze. You might engage in light conversation, discussing the success of the feast, or perhaps reflecting on a particular piece of news or entertainment from the evening. There's no casual stroll to bed. It's a small procession, often through dimly lit corridors, sometimes with a torchbearer leading the way, their light flickering on the ancient tapestries that line the walls. Before you finally seek slumber, a final act of devotion is customary. You would retreat to your private chapel or a secluded corner of your solar for evening prayers, often Compline or Vespers. This is a moment of quiet reflection, giving thanks for the day and commending your soul to God for the night ahead. In an era where life was unpredictable and often cut short by illness or violence, these spiritual rituals provided a profound sense of comfort and security. You might kneel, alone or with your chaplain, letting the day's responsibilities and anxieties ebb away in the quiet solemnity of prayer. Finally, you retire to your bedchamber, your most private space within the castle. Your attendants would help you shed your day's elaborate clothing, replacing it with simpler nightwear. Your bed, likely a substantial structure with heavy curtains, would be prepared. These curtains are not just for warmth. They are your primary source of privacy in a household where truly being alone was a rare luxury. They create a room within a room, shielding you from drafts and, crucially, from the eyes and ears of any servants or even guards who might be sleeping in the same chamber. Historians still debate the specific sleeping arrangements in medieval castles, with evidence suggesting that even lords might have attendants sleeping in their room for security, albeit on humble pallets. One quirky tidbit about medieval retirement: chamber pots were ubiquitous, even in the lord's private chambers, as indoor plumbing was virtually non-existent. These ceramic or metal vessels served their obvious purpose and would be emptied by servants in the morning. So, while your bedchamber offered a semblance of privacy, the practical realities of medieval sanitation were always, present. The final act of your medieval day is this retreat into the relative peace and security of your bed, allowing your mind and body to rest before the demands of another noble dawn inevitably begin anew. This detailed journey through the daily life of a medieval noble lord reveals a constant interplay of power, responsibility, and unwavering dedication. From the don's demanding administrative duties to the martial rigors of the training grounds, from the delicate balance of political influence to the vibrant communal feasts, every hour was meticulously structured and imbued with purpose. Your role was not merely one of privilege, but of relentless stewardship over your lands and people, underscored by the pervasive influence of the church and the ever-present threat of conflict. It was a life of profound contrasts, grand ceremonies alongside stark realities, immense power balanced by heavy obligations, and moments of personal solace interspersed with constant public scrutiny. As the castle sleeps, you, the Lord, rest, knowing that with the next crow of the rooster, the weighty and endlessly complex tapestry of your noble life will begin to weave itself once more.